What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. We finally have some double game week announcements for game week 21. They've become before the deadline. We got them the day before. Yes, there's not too much time to think about it, but luckily there's not too much fixtures to think about either, right? So I'm going to go through what's been announced, which double game weeks we have, which teams now have games which wouldn't have before in game week 21, what that might mean for 22, chip strategy. There's a hell of a lot of stuff going to be covered in this video. So if you do enjoy it, give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you are new around here. Don't forget to check out my 888 Sport article, which is linked in the description below. Otherwise, let's jump into it. Okay, so what's happened? The Premier League have announced some of the TV fixtures for February and also some rearrangements, right? So this is where we're getting the double game weeks from. So as you can see, Ben was one of the first people to tweet about it as normal. Southampton versus Brentford and Leicester versus Everton have been moved to double game week 21. So they were teams, Southampton and Leicester, that had games called off, which we'll go into in a second, that now haven't. Brentford, West Ham and Everton are the only teams with a double game week, right? So these are the double game week teams. So you got West Ham versus Crystal Palace away and Norwich at home, which is pretty good. Obviously, there have been times this season where we've seen Crystal Palace do a good job defensively, but they're not watertight. They're not Chelsea. They're not, well, maybe not Chelsea recently. They're not Man City. You get the point, right? They are still a team that can be scored against, especially for a team as good as West Ham. And then they've got Norwich at home, which is obviously one of the best fixtures you can get. Everton have got a double game week, Brighton at home and Leicester at home. I would say that's not quite as good. I think Leicester are a team that can concede goals too, apart from when they're playing Liverpool, obviously, recently. But defensively, they've not been great this year. And to be fair, Liverpool should have scored in that game. Brighton at home is probably a little bit more difficult, I would say. The problem is, we'll come on to in a minute, is which Everton players to go for. I think it's a bit more obvious with West Ham than it is for Everton. And then Brentford have got one. Now, we've almost forgotten about Brentford, right? We haven't had a lot of people haven't had Tony in their teams for a while. Mbomo kind of came and went again. Defenders-wise, we've not really ever had too many Brentford defenders in our team. But their double game week's not too bad. I think Southampton away is a good enough fixture. And Villa at home, again, it's not a team that they're going to kind of put 3-4 goals past, but they could definitely score in a fixture like that. So there are some interesting teams to look at. There might only be a few players from each team that we'd actually want. And we've got to think about long term, right? There still potentially could be double game weeks in game week 22. Obviously, if there are, we're not going to find out till later because we've only heard about game week 21. So we don't want to take out too many players with good long-term fixtures just to get an additional fixture this week, right? If that makes sense. The other thing that's been announced is some of the games that have moved, obviously, have meant that Southampton and Leicester have now got games when they didn't before. So Southampton have got Brentford at home, which is actually not a bad fixture. The interesting thing, as we'll talk about later, is these fixtures have been put in after the FA Cup game. So there's going to be now, for the double game week teams, they're going to have their normal fixture, then they're going to have an FA Cup game, and then they got another fixture. So there could even still be postponements. These games that have been rearranged could later on be postponed. There could be injuries in the FA Cup matches. There's lots to think about. And Leicester have now got Everton away. So if you brought in Maddison early, or if you got Maddison for game week 20, and then were worried because the Norwich game got called off, obviously Everton away isn't quite as good, but it still means that those players are going to play. For my team, for example, I brought Broyer in for a hit. I talked about on Team Selection that I was going to get rid of him for a hit, and now potentially, because he's playing Brentford at home, I could just keep him. I'm going to talk about my team at the end because obviously my thoughts and stuff will have changed a little bit with these announcements. Let's talk about the shortlist. All right, let's talk about the shortlist of players. Now, obviously, there's only 3 teams with double game week, so that's all we really need to kind of think about now, to a certain extent anyway. I'll come on to that in just a second. And then obviously those teams have only got a certain amount of players that we should really be looking at anyway. One thing we have to consider is how much longer we're going to want these players for after this week, and also whether we're taking out a player that might have a double game week in 22. Now, if you watched my video this morning, my team selection video, I spoke about this image from Ben Crellin again. Go and follow him on Twitter. I think at this point, if you're not following, you're probably never going to. And I did also say about how difficult it is to predict the fixtures. It was the same last year where stuff just got thrown at us. No one was really predicting it. The fixtures that we knew were going to be rearranged happened at a different time. And that's happened again. So Ben actually put, and this is not a dig at him or anything, right? He will tell you how difficult it is at the moment. This is more to kind of show you why we need to be cautious about next week. So West Ham was kind of in as possible double game week, but not necessarily as sure as maybe like a Watford one. And in fact, Watford don't have one, but West Ham do, right? So they've got this Norwich game in, but there's still a bunch of fixtures to rearrange. So all these teams in yellow, so Burnley, Man United, Brighton, Spurs, Leicester in particular, obviously they've got their match against Everton now in 21. And then some of these teams in orange as well, so Leeds, Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool, they could still have double game week 22. So we don't want to rush out and sell all those players just to get a game week 21 player, because you gain a fixture this week, but you might lose one next week, right? And if you lose a Liverpool extra fixture for an Everton extra one, then it's probably not worth it, right? So that's something to consider. The other thing is, what are their fixtures like afterwards? So for West Ham, for example, they've now got a pretty good double, Crystal Palace and Norwich. Then they're going to go to Leeds, pretty good. Man United away, tough-ish. Then Watford, then Leicester, then Newcastle. West Ham are good long-term picks, so they should be the key team that we're looking at. Then you've got Everton, so they might have another double game week in 22 as well, so you might want to go for them because of that. Then they got Villa, Newcastle, Leeds, Southampton. So they also have good long-term fixtures, and probably should be looked at as well. With Brentford, it's a little bit different. If I just find them on this list, they again may have a double game week in 22, but one of the fixtures will be Liverpool, and one of them might be Man United. Then they've got Wolves, Man City. So as long-term options, Brentford maybe aren't quite as good. So if we're looking at players from Brentford, I would only really look at Tony. I think it is a pretty good double game week. You could then look to get rid of him in game week 22 if you wanted to. For Everton, if you need a goalkeeper, let's say you kept Ramsdale or something and now you want to sell him because he's got Man City and you'd rather get a double game week keeper, then Pickford might be a good medium-term option. Defence is pretty tricky because Keane's really the only one that's kind of played every single game. Holgate's a bit cheaper, but I don't think you'd be as sure about him starting maybe as you would be with Keane. Luca Dean's, obviously there's talk about him going to Chelsea as well. So I think there's not really too many options. I don't think I would bring in an Everton defender if I'm completely honest. The only attackers I would look at are Gray and Calvert-Lewin. The problem with Calvert-Lewin is we don't even know if he's going to start the first game. I would say he'll probably get, I don't know, maybe 90 to 120 minutes over the two games, depending on how much he gets in the FA Cup as well. And that is, I don't know, like for example, if you get a choice between Calvert-Lewin or Antonio, for me, Antonio is the only one to go for. The fixtures are slightly better. The long-term fixtures are good. We know he's fit. Of course, he could miss some of the minutes in one of the games. But I think right now, if you're betting on him or Calvert-Lewin, you have to go for Antonio. Calvert-Lewin I would go for if I had, I don't know, a spare transfer for someone. Maybe I've got, like for me, I've got Broya. Maybe you've got the money to go to Calvert-Lewin. You already own Antonio. Maybe you could do it, but there has to be some risk around him starting. Benitez talked about it today, and he basically said whether he starts or whether he comes off the bench, how much can he manage? They don't really know yet. He hasn't played since game week 3. We have to remember that. So he is a risk, I would say. Gray is a bit of a cheaper option. 5.5 million, much easier to fit into our team. Should be fully fit as well. And obviously the fixture's good, and you could hold him for a bit longer. So I actually think Calvert-Lewin is definitely the better option. He's also on penalties. I love the guy. Really good price. But Gray is probably a little bit safer right now, at least for this week. Maybe moving forward, that's Calvert-Lewin. But it depends how much risk you want to take. With West Ham, your absolute priority transfers this week should be Antonio and Bowen, in my opinion. I think there is a case to be made that Bowen might be a little bit better for minutes and arguably a better captain than Antonio. I'll come on to that in a little bit. In defence, again, you've got Fabianski if you want to go for a goalkeeper. Otherwise, in defence, it's actually a bit tricky, right? Johnson, Diop, Sofal. Johnson has been playing left-back while Cresswell's been out. Once Cresswell's back, we don't really know if Johnson or Sofal will keep the right-back spot. It was Johnson's spot, right? Moyes said it was his. He'd done enough to keep the place. But Sofal's been playing pretty well now while Johnson's been out on the left. So we don't know who's going to come in. So there's a little bit of risk there, I would say. And obviously with Diop, a few people, when I mentioned him on team selection, said that Zuma might be back sooner than Moyes or West Ham originally thought. So he might be a good option for the double game week, but not necessarily long term. For what it's worth, right now, unless loads of West Ham fans tell me different, I'm looking at bringing Sofal in. So yeah, that is it. I think defensively there's a few risks, but Bowen and Antonio have got to be the priority transfers. And then Tony, Calvert-Lewin and Gray are probably the only other ones I would consider. And like I said, keep an eye on this spreadsheet about which players you're taking out. You don't want to take out a player that's got a good chance of having a double game week next week. But of course, if you've got the free hit, then it might not matter, right? Because you can just use that next week. We're going to talk about chip strategy in a sec. Right, so aside from which players to cover and stuff like that, there's obviously strategy, chip strategy and stuff like that. Other questions people might have about captaincy now, of course. Where's Double Game Week 22? When will that get announced and stuff like that? So I'm going to try and run through it all. Obviously, there's not too long till the deadline. We've only just got this news. So these are kind of initial reactions and initial thoughts, right? So in my opinion, Wildcard does not look as good as it might have done a few weeks ago when we were hoping that Double Game Week 21 and 22 would get announced at the same time. Now, obviously, I go back to this image from Ben. We know, right, even without seeing Ben's spreadsheet, we know which teams have fixtures to rearrange. The problem is we don't know when they're going to go, right? So, for example, if you look at this, Brentford here, they've got Liverpool, and then they've either got Man United or Southampton. Now, Ben says it's more likely to be Man United, but that doesn't mean it will definitely be the case. So if you get... Liverpool's obviously tricky, right? But if Brentford has Southampton, that's a whole different ballgame to whether they get Man United. And which fixture goes into 22 is going to determine which players you want to target. So wildcarding with just 3 double game week teams, where you don't really want to go for 2 or 3 Brentford players, you probably don't even want 2 or 3 Everton players. It's a lot just to get a couple of extra West Ham players and guess at what happens in game week 22. So I actually think the free hit for game week 22... and not doing anything this week other than using transfers, and you can use hits and stuff like that. And I know one of the questions will be, how many double game week players do I need? There's no definite number. Some people will go for 6, 7 maybe. I'm probably going to go for 3 or 4, and that'll be my lot, right? Because I don't want to spend loads of points for players that I don't want long term. The thing I like about the free hit as well is you get to wait until next week to see, so before the Game Week 22 deadline, to see what's happened, what's been announced and stuff like that. If you use the wildcard, you're kind of locking into players right now. You really don't want to wildcard them free hit, in my opinion. I just think that would be a waste of both the chips. So if you get to Game Week 22... and your team looks pretty good, maybe the double game week fixtures have been announced and maybe they've fallen into place so well that your team is set up, you just use no chips, right? Maybe you use your triple captain, for example. But if you're stuck, then you could use the free hit instead, right? So I don't know. If you've got any different opinions, please do leave them below, because I am like just quick thinking about this when it's just been announced. But I just don't see wildcard very appealing at all. And it's not that I'm kind of against using it early. I just think the way this has fallen, we don't have enough info about what's about to happen after 21, right? So free hit is possibly better in 22. Would I use it in 21? Probably not. I think most people have already got 1 or 2 West Ham players anyway. They're good long-term holds. So if you free hit them in this week, you lose them for next week anyway. So in my opinion, you should just transfer them in. Triple captaincy is very interesting, right? If you think, for example, there's a chance you're going to use the free hit next week, you can also use your triple captain. You can only use 1 chip in any given game week, right? And you can't use free hit one after another. We already know that from the announcement recently. So you could use the triple captain this week. My only worry is that FA Cup game in the middle. For anyone that's watched the channel for a while, you'll know my triple captaincy track record is really poor. I can just see me captaining Antonio. He gets injured in the FA Cup game and then misses out the Norwich game, and that would be a nightmare. But I do think West Ham's fixtures are good enough for a triple captaincy, because Bowen and Antonio are both very good FPL options. There will be more double game weeks down the line other than game week 22, so there will be a chance maybe to use it on Ronaldo or Salah or someone like that in the future. So I don't think you have to use it this week, but I do think there is an option to do it. It's just a little bit risky because of that FA Cup game. So that's the only thing I would consider. Whether or not we'll get a better option later on, possibly. I mean, if you look at this screenshot again, potentially, not definitely, it could be Brentford and Leeds at home for Liverpool in game week 22. Therefore, okay, Salah's missing, but Jota could be your your triple captain. Trent Alexander-Arnold could definitely be a triple captain there as well. Man United might have Villa away and Brentford at home. Brighton at home, or maybe Brentford away. Again, maybe Cristiano Ronaldo is the triple captain for that. I personally think I'm more likely to use it this week just because I think there's a chance I use the free hit next week. But if I'm worried about that FA Cup game, I'll just save the triple captain for later on in the season. There will be more double game weeks. This is not going to be it. And obviously FA Cup fixtures I've covered. And double game week 22, like I said, I do think there's a chance that gets announced soon, like in the next week or so. which is why I don't want to do too much hasty stuff this week. In terms of captaincy, for me, it's definitely between Antonio or Bowen. I hate not captaining double game week players. I won't even consider a single game week captaincy now, like Son, for example, against Watford. He's pretty good. Salah's still good against Chelsea. But for me, you've got to go for a double game week player if you can. It's not even that it's just better, it's just more fun. Why would you go for a single game week player? So it's between Bowen, it's between Antonio. I think the safer pick for minutes, I don't know why I did that. The safer pick for minutes is probably Bowen. Underlying stats-wise, Bowen's also pretty damn good. And he's a midfielder, so more points for clean sheet and goal. I'm drawn towards Antonio. I think he's just had 2 returns in the last 2. We know what he can do. Look what he did early on in the season, right? We've got to remember that this isn't just a flash in the pan for Antonio. I know he's not been great recently, and a lot of people got rid of him, but we know what he can do, and he's got the fixtures. So right now I'm on Antonio. Part of me is drawn to thinking that Bowen's a little bit safer, but one of those two it's got to be this week. So I wouldn't usually talk about my own team too much in these type of videos, right, where we're talking about double game weeks, but there's not very long to the deadline. There's no way I'm doing another team selection / team reveal video, so I'm going to cover it in this one. This is my team as it stands. Right now, there's no games off, right, because obviously Leicester and Southampton got put back in. So Broja suddenly against Brentford at home, that's a pretty good fixture. There's no guarantee he definitely plays that, because obviously that match is on... it's on the 11th of January, so they will have an FA Cup game in between. So maybe he plays the FA Cup and doesn't play against Brentford. So that's a little bit of a worry for me. Right now, my captaincy is on Antonio. I've got to be honest, it's very close. Like, I had another quick look at the numbers, and I think expected goal involvement for Antonio is like 0.61. And it's something like 0.54 for Bowen, so it's very close. Bowen may be more secure for minutes and midfielder, right? So extra point for the goal, extra point for the clean sheet, like I said. So I might swap that around. That might be a gut call, as will be the triple captaincy as well, because it is pretty tempting because of that Norwich fixture. I just hate that the FA Cup game is in the middle of it, right? Coming on to transfers, okay? Let's just bench Alonso, because I think that's what I'm going to do. There's obviously, you know, talk from Klopp now that Liverpool have got some COVID cases and stuff like that. I'm not sure exactly who it is or anything like that. I did see a rumour on Twitter that it could be Alisson. I got Alonso on the brain. Alisson and Firmino, but I don't know how legit that is at all. So I'm just going to risk that Jota starts and play him. So James is definitely going to get transferred out this week. And I'm pretty sure I'm going to go for a West Ham defender. As I've just spoken about on the shortlist, I do think that Sofal is probably the better option, but I've got to be honest, I'm not sure how confident I am that Johnson obviously plays left back, and then when Cresswell's back, doesn't just take the right back spot back. It's really difficult to know, to be honest. Like, Diop as a short-term option might actually be slightly better. He's just not very attacking. That gives me 1.5 million to spend. Unless I sell Ronaldo, which I don't think I'm prepared to do this week, I cannot get Calvert-Lewin. I could get Gray, but Bowen obviously can't be sold. Son's got Watford. Foden maybe to Gray. Maybe. But longer term, Foden's got some pretty good fixtures. And I do think there's a chance that I will free hit next week. So I'll skip the Chelsea game and then get him back for this little fixture run. So I kind of want to keep him. I know some people will think about wildcard and then bench boost, which I didn't talk about in the chip strategy. But again, without knowing the fixtures, I'm not really too sure how we can build like a really good bench boost team. I don't know, maybe I just think I haven't got time to think about it, but without knowing those double game week 22 fixtures, I just don't really want to do it. I'd rather do it later on. And Jota, again, like I said, could have a double game week in 22, and while Salah's away and Mane's away, he's pretty much nailed on, and Liverpool got some good fixtures. So I don't really want to sell any of my midfielders. So my only option is Broja out to Tony, which could be done, because I do think, let me just put him in, obviously, he's nailed 90 minutes penalties, right? So that's all good. Villa at home, Southampton away is not that bad. He has got bad fixtures afterwards. That's the only thing. Liverpool, Wolves, Man City. Potentially does have another double game week in 22. But if I free hit, it doesn't matter. I would just get rid of him anyway. So that's the only hit that I'm thinking of doing. Is James to Sofal, which I think I'll do anyway. I think I'll do James to a West Ham defender, definitely. And it's just whether or not I want to bring in Tony as well. If I could afford Calvert-Lewin, I might take a punt on it. But I don't know. The other option, by the way, is to keep Broja and just do Brownhill to Gray. That beefs up my squad a little bit, so it gives me an extra player to play around with. But potentially does hurt my team a little bit longer term because money's more spread out. But that could be an option. The only thing is then, I would be taking a hit to get Gray for 2 games to bench Broja, who's got a pretty good game. So I'd be taking a hit to not play Broja against Brentford at home. I don't know if that's a good way, but I guess it gives me a little bit more cover, right? I'd play Cancelo, Trent, so far. If Cancelo doesn't play, Alonso comes in, and I've still got Broja on the bench. So I'm tempted to take a hit. I do like getting more double game week players if I can. And with the free hit next week, I'm not really worried about who I take out necessarily. So I think that's my moves. James to Sofal or Johnson, and then Gray in for Brownhill or Tony in for Broja. And I think that's it. That's my team. Let me know who you think I should be bringing in the comments below. So there we go. I really do hope that was helpful. I tried to get this video out as quickly as possible because I know there's a lot of info in there. There's a lot of things to think about. The deadline's tomorrow. It's also New Year's Eve, so I'm sure people won't be in a great state tomorrow. But either way, I'll be doing the deadline stream tomorrow. So if you have enjoyed this video, if you're looking forward to the deadline stream, do give it a like. Hit that subscribe button if you're new around here. Every time there's double game week announcements or any kind of big announcement like that, we will have a video ready to go. So make sure you're subscribed, hit that notification bell. Good luck with the picks. I'm going to go and try and figure out exactly who I'm bringing in. Otherwise, yeah, I'll leave it there. Give it a like, hit subscribe, and I'll see you again soon.